In this video, we are going to review the repetition structure and how it works in Python. As you know, programmers commonly write a code in order to perform the same task over and over again. So the goal of writing a Python program is to automate a set of tasks. So rather than writing a code that asks a question 10 times, we want to write a code in a way that it gets the task done repetitively. Let's say if we had an example of calculating commission for salespeople. Rather than writing the code 10 times, we want this code to run for all the 10 salespeople that we have at the store consecutively. So instead of writing this sequence of statements over and over again, what we can do is that we can write a repetition structure, or commonly known as a loop structure. So here we look at two broad categories of loops. We have condition control, and also we have count control. In the condition control, we have a true-false condition that will control the number of times that a set of actions are going to be repeated. In a count control loop, we basically have a specific number of times where that program or that statement is going to run. Now, in this chapter and in next few sessions, we are going to show how we can write these both types of loops. Let's first start with the while loop. So the while loop gets its name from the way it works. So as long as a condition is true, the Python will keep repeating the code and it will test for the condition and do the statements that are coming after a while statement. The moment the condition becomes false, the program will get out of that loop. So let's look at this in the format of a flowchart. So imagine that we have an input. We are checking for the condition. If the condition is false, as I mentioned, the program will exit. However, if the outcome of a test is true, the program will run a set of statements, all the actions that are required, whatever that you have written in your code. And what it does, it will repeat and check for the process again. If I want to be more specific, it will basically run the loop over and over and over again. And this is different from the way we were running an if statement in the previous sessions, because in if statement we're checking for the condition, and if it's true we'll do some statements and then we'll exit. And also in the same way, if there's false, we might do something or we might do nothing and then we'll exit. The difference between while and if is that it will repeat that process over and over again when we are writing a while statement. Okay, so let's go through some simple examples to see how it works. The general syntax for while statement is while the condition colon, then we indent the code, very similar to the conditional structure, and then we write our statements. Okay, so this is a very simple example. Imagine we have a set of numbers. We first set I variable to 1, and then we say as long as I is less or equal to 5, print I. And once you print it, add one to the value of an I variable. So the first run of this code, this is the way Python will interpret this. So it will get the value of I equal to 1. It will print it. So the first run is going to be 1. Then it will add to 1 and I will become 2. It will check for the condition. The condition is still true, so it will print 2. In the same way, it will print 3 and 4 and 5, because 5 is less than equal to 5. But once I turns into 6, that condition becomes false, and then it will print just a set of stars for aesthetics, just to separate the code. So let's see the result of this run. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different iterations of this while loop, and then it will exit the while loop and print the last set of strings. Let's look at another example. In this example, we talked about the commissions and sales a number of times. So we said, get the sales number if and calculate. Basically, calculate the amount for the commissions. Let's say 5%, 15%, 20%, and then calculate the total commission. So we have this, and again, we want to do this for a number of employees in the organization. Let's say we have 10 salesmen in our company. So what we do is that first we can create a variable and set that variable to yes or true, or in this case I said assign it to y. Just to make it easier, call that variable keep going, but you can call it anything else. So the first check is if keep going is equal to y, go through this loop. What is it in the loop? Prompt the user to enter the amount of sales, so receive that value from the user, receive the commission rate, calculate and display the commission. And finally, this is the end of the loop. This is very important. So in order for our loop to be checked, so we want to ask the user if they have additional, let's say, salesperson that this loop needs to be repeated for. So we prompt the user, do you want to calculate another commission? Enter Y for yes or N for no. And then assign that input variable to keep going. So basically you're changing the value. So initially it was assigned to Y. So as long as it's equal to Y, this process is going to be repeated. The moment we are done with it, the user will provide N or no, and it will exit the loop and it will end the loop here. This is an example of how a code would look like. So we have keep going equal to Y, and we say while keep going is literally equal to Y, do these steps. And again, as I mentioned, what we do is that we ask for input if they want to calculate another commission, and we say enter Y for yes. So as long as they do Y, it will repeat the process. Let me just run this on my end quickly. I have the code in idle, so let's just run it and give it a few examples. So it says enter the amount of sales. I will say 10,000. What's the commission rate? I'll just say 20%. And then it says the commission is $2,000, which is quite a bit. But imagine if the company is very generous with the salespeople. Do you want to calculate another commission? Enter Y for yes. So if I say Y, it will repeat the loop. It says enter the amount of sales. I'm gonna say 10,000, 100,000 in this case. What's the commission rate? Let's say just 5%, and it will come up to $5,000. And again, it will ask that question again. Do you want to calculate another commission? And in this case, I'm just gonna say no. You can also do anything else, and then it will exit the loop and it will stop the program. So this is how a while loop might work. Let's run one more example to make sure this is clear, and then we're gonna talk about some ways to make the code a little more interesting and more complex. So we have a project that's currently underway in a company called Chemical Labs, and it requires a substance temperature to be checked every 15 minutes. If it's over 102.5, then the technician have to do certain steps. If it's under it, it's good. That's the temperature that we want. If it's over, we want the technician to stop, let's say the machine, or turn down the thermostat, wait for 5 minutes, check the temperature again. If it's below the threshold, they can start, let's say, the machine, or they can up the temperature again. And we have a director of engineering that wants to convey this information. He wants to guide the technician through this process. So from this, we can just make some speculation. So we can see that our criteria is the temperature exceeding 102.5. So being higher than that should trigger a while loop. If it's below that, I think we're fine. And if it's over, we want to do a set of actions. Let's say print a couple of statements. So let's see an example of a code that we can do on this. Feel free also to pause the video here and do it on your end. Again, think of these as some practices for your own. So see if you can get the code all right before you're seeing the answer. Here's an example of a code you might like. So let's say we call a variable maximum temperature, and the initial value is set to 102.5. Then we receive new input from the technician. We're reading the new temperature. So we say enter the substance's temperature. And while the temperature is greater than that number, or we say while the temperature is greater than 102.5, do the set of actions. Print the temperature is too high, turn the thermostat down, wait for 5 minutes, and take the temperature again. So that's the message, let's say, we're presenting to the user. And then what we do is that we get new values for the temperature, very similar to previous examples. So temperature, after you waited for, let's say, 5 minutes, enter the new temperature. And if the temperature is again over the threshold, it will redo the loop. If it's not, so once that condition is false, it will print these two statements. Let's say the temperature is acceptable. Make sure to check the temperature again in 15 minutes, or any other message that is similar to this.